What's up, bookworms? This is Megan coming at you with another Cantina conversation. Today's episode features a chat with Lauren Claudare. We're talking about her book, Cover Stories, that is available now. This was such a cool conversation with Lauren because of her past experiences in her professional life as an investigative journalist. And some of her experiences, both personal and professional, helped inspire her story and her character's story and the situations that she found herself in. So it was really cool to hear about that. But either way, I'll let you guys get to it. Here is Lauren Claudare. Today we've got Lauren Claudare. We're talking about her book, Cover Stories. That book is available now. Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today. Psychological suspense. I enjoyed getting to know your characters and really figuring out how the hell Annabelle was going to figure things out and with the wrench in the mix of her situationship. But yeah, thanks. We'll get into it. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So to get started, can you share a summary of the book for people who haven't picked it up yet?
Sure. So, Cover Stories is about an ambitious, driven news broadcaster, a broadcast journalist who is at the top of her game, almost at the very top of her game, and very focused on her career. She is introduced to a guy named Ryan through a mutual friend, quickly gets swept up in that relationship with him, and falls pretty hard for him without knowing that he is actually undercover in the CIA. She learns this through circumstances that she should not, but the mutual friend that they had that introduced them shares the to navigate his kind of secretive world of lies and deception, incredibly isolated and in a very strange place, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's like a lot to unpack there because there's so many levels and like implications of a journalist dating an undercover CIA agent, like a broadcast like journalist, nevertheless. And yeah, like you described, she's on her way, like climbing up and almost at the peak of her career. And then this happens and it's almost like the classic something's in her way and she's got to decide like how she wants to move forward. But then as readers, I'll speak for myself, as I got to know Brian, he's a bit problematic. So I just remember reading it, being like, "Girl, don't worry about him. It's okay. Like you focus on him. He's, just playing like these romantic gestures to sweep her off her feet, and I get it."
Yeah, I would say that problematic is a generous way of putting it.
Yeah.
He's not ultimately what we would describe as a good person, so to speak. Yes, I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I know. We'll certainly get into that. Could you get into your background a little bit and maybe like professionally brought this story out into the world and if any experiences like prepared you to write this book?
Sure. So my background, I actually was a journalist in, I would say, my former life now at this point, but I was never on air. I was a producer at a broadcast news, like cable network. And the story is actually very much rooted in my experience. I had a relationship that was like that. Very strange place to be in my role, even as a producer, where I wasn't the
Mm,
face of the news coverage. But I often found kind of my relationship and my role in covering stories that my then boyfriend was living
mm,
in. This was back in the story set back in 2006. This was years ago now, the height of the war in Afghanistan and being deployed there, and like me knowing that he was there, but he wasn't like nobody was supposed to know he was there, right? Because he was
mm,
undercover. So, like me having to go to work every day and pretend to be covering these stories where I didn't sometimes know if he was like even still alive, right? There was scary
mm,
moments where I was like, I always knew just enough to be like constantly anxious, but never enough to
mm.
be like to know that everything was okay.
Uh,
Because there would be like weeks and months at a time where I wouldn't hear anything from him. So that was like a very difficult place. And so I started writing things down about that experience just as a way to like keep myself sane. And then I thought to myself, there seems like there's like a story here. Like I should be, this is obviously Cover Stories, the book is very much fictionalized in a lot of ways, but it's based on that experience that I had had.
that's wild. Oh my god. How long were you like so what is okay, hold on, I have a lot of questions. So
Okay.
like how long were you dating this person before he was deployed?
So we were, let's see, about a year and a half. And
And then did you like so he was he all already serving and then but he was like at
he
home or
was
whatever?
training. He was
Okay.
training at that time. And without revealing too much about my background, I was at the time living in Washington, D.C., which is not where Annabelle, the character, is. She's in New York. So I was living in
Mm.
Washington, which is obviously where the CIA is. And it wasn't uncommon to like cross paths with those types of people every now and then, right? Because
Sure.
that's where they live. And I had always like been planning on moving to New York, to be honest. It was never like I never thought there was gonna be like a serious relationship. So like when I found out like what he was really doing, I didn't really care that much. So I was like, oh, whatever, this is a fling. It doesn't matter. And then
Mm.
it turned out that it was not. And then it was not a fling. It ended up lasting like way longer than it should have and way longer than I had originally anticipated. And by the time like he was gone, you would think that's like a natural end point for this type of thing. And I
Mm.
wanted it to be, but like it wasn't because there was a lot of kind of I need you, like you're the only person that can help me. I know I you know something no one else knows. I need your support. And so I got sucked
Mm.
into this. And that's a lot of the challenges that Annabelle, the character, experiences as well, where she's guilted into this kind of awkward position and she
Yeah.
probably wants to get out, but like she feels like she can't. There's a lot of allure in being the one person that knows something that nobody else knows, especially when you're in
Yeah.
her world, right? Where like
Yeah.
information is a currency, right? And so I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of her thinking like this is great for my career in a lot of ways because I have access to all this secret information that I should have no business
Yeah.
having. So that was like a real strange dynamic.
Yeah, I can imagine. So is Ryan like a little manifestation of the
Yes, I would say yes, and then
It's like
some.
your therapy.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, in a lot of ways it was because it ended up being, and I think that one of the challenges also is that, like, when you're in that type of situation and you know so little about this person's world, right? You only know enough about what they're willing to share with you. And then at the same time, you also start to realize, and Annabelle starts to realize in her relationship, we'll focus it on her relationship more, is that he becomes like quite controlling. And the challenge there
Yeah.
is that because of who he is, or is it because of what he does? Like, how much of this is
Yeah.
necessitated by his job and his career? And that I think is something that she really struggles with. And so to answer your question, like that is like the worst parts of my real life experience, which was like, and then exaggerated
Mhm.
because it is a strange, incredibly isolating place to be because you don't know, and who can you ask?
Yeah.
There's not like a support
Exactly.
group for these types of people. It's like everyone has an asshole they've dated, but
Yeah.
it's a different ball game when you can't share anything because you feel like you
Right.
can't blow this person's cover, even though you're not like legally required. Like I never signed anything, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
But you still feel
There's nothing stopping you, but it's like having the respect for the situation
right,
and
exactly.
it's like the umbrella is covers a lot more than between these two people, the relationship.
Correct. So yeah, he's like the
'Cause like
worst. He's the worst version of real life person, I would say.
I was gonna say, yeah, I can imagine Ryan coming in saying the perfect things and being upfront. I don't know how long I'm gonna be around. She's, oh, that's fine. And then, yeah, like the feelings grow deeper, but and then I just remember he was acting like the perfect like boyfriend almost, paying for meals that he was maybe supposed to go to but didn't, or
Yeah,
like he always seemed to be at the right place at the right time to like, run into her and her friends or whatever and then put it on he would pay the tab and it's like all these like grand gestures, so it's of course she would fall for him easily and because he's like handsome and swoony and thoughtful, but then it's as the relationship progresses as they get in a little bit deeper, like we see how horrible, like through Brian's point of view anyway, like we see how horrible of a person he is and his thought processes. So I can like dig into that. Like, how was it navigating or getting into the headspace of two different points of view? And because like they're two very different people. And obviously you have direct experience with one character's kind of like position and background, but to get in the headspace of making the voice sound different, like applying the motivation, I imagine because it's not like it's it was told in third person if I remember correctly, but it's you got to get in this kind of navigate the headspace and switch back and forth. I want to explore like how you tackled that.
It was hard because in the earliest drafts of this novel, I had done it in first person from both perspectives. And it was
Mm,
so hard to do it like that. Just for the reasons that you shared, it's like I can get into like my headspace pretty easily and like the Annabelle
yeah.
headspace pretty easily. And she is also like a mixture of people that I had encountered in my days in TV. So I
Mm,
knew like what would be motivating for her. And like I just remember interacting with these types of people, what they were like, their personalities. But in his I just, as much as I tried, I could not get the first person for the Ryan character. It just never
yeah.
sounded authentic. It never felt right. It always just was not good. So then I redid the entire thing in the third person point of view, which is also challenging. It is challenging to
Mm,
make them each one sound different, but I felt really strongly that it had to be told from both perspectives. I felt like the reader would be missing a lot of the story if they didn't get his side of it. And
mm,
also, I felt like it was important to, if I couldn't explain like the motivations for him or understand them, at least present them, right? Like he is a
mm,
strange
mm,
person. He is like you to do what he does, you have to be a little bit out there. You just do. I'm sorry, but you
mhm.
do. And you have to have like really almost no feeling at all in some ways, just to be able to like walk away from everyone in your life like that and just to disappear into this like secret world and leave everybody behind you. Who wants to do that? It's not the type of person who like wants to settle down and like have a family, right?
Yeah, like he has to like emotionally unavailable, like aloof or just kind of like unbothered, like to just carry on and not look back.
Totally.
Like that's the impression that I get for sure. But then I don't know, there's it is, but he like definitely proves that he has no business being in a relationship anyway. Like he's just
That's the thing.
like,
That's always the question is, I'm like, why bother? And that was what I was trying to get at. If you knew going into this relation, maybe from his perspective, he also was just expecting it to be something quick. And
sure,
but
yeah,
also maybe for him, it's like he just doesn't care, which is another thing.
yeah,
That's true too. And there are people like that who exist in this world who are just like, well, this
mm.
is not the right thing to do, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I want what I want, and that's the end of it. And power to those people.
It's almost a little jaded, almost like nothing matters. Let's like
Yeah,
screw it.
who
Like it's
cares?
just
Yeah, exactly. You don't like this about me? That's too bad. I literally don't care.
yeah. Yeah, those people are interesting for fictionalized characters for sure, but I can't imagine how frustrating it is to like really deal with people because I imagine those kind of people, like even in the broadcast journalism industry, media industry in general, you see the desperation and like through Annabelle too. She's really steam powered, like she's definitely motivated and driven, and that's like the battle she has because I imagine in journalism you have to follow the tips and the details and you have to get the story, you have to get the information, and I can't imagine the lengths that some people would go to in order to get that snippet or get that detail or get that exclusive before anybody else. And so I imagine you have to deal with some of those personalities in that industry as well. And you definitely like apply that with Annabelle, where she's definitely at war with herself
Yeah.
because she's like, how, God, what do I do?
Yeah, what does she do? I think she knows what she wants to do. I think it's hard for a lot of reasons. I think there's definitely a part of her that's wanting to not sit on any information that she has and share it. That's like the reporter in
Mm,
her. But then there's
hmm.
part of her that like is in this weird scenario where she's like, I feel like I need to protect him,
Yeah.
even though he's
Yeah.
a problematic person.
Yes. To put it, what did you say? Put it generously.
Put it mildly. Yes, correct.
So hopping off, I don't know if did you do any research outside of what you originally know, like inside your brain through your experiences, or did you have to reconnect with anyone to bring this story to life? Or I want to explore how your approach was and maybe big lessons learned and stuff like that.
So not, I didn't do like specific research, just to your point, because I lived this enough, and
Yeah.
especially on the TV side, right? Like, that was a world I was very comfortable in. And then I had done over the years when I was in this relationship, I had read some books about what it is to be like a CIA operative. There was a book called,
Mm,
who wrote it? Her name is Lindsay something. I can't think of what her name was, but I think it was called Blowing My Cover, and it was about like her experience as a woman in the CIA and like she was undercover and like what that was like. So I read a couple of books like about that, just not as I was writing this, just in my life in the past. And so I had I remembered what I had read from those stories. Like,
it was like, yeah, emotionally abusive. Is that what that is? Because I'm like trying to look up. Even now, I think I saw an article or something that was like defining and giving examples of each type of abuse in like
yeah,
domestic partnership or whatever. And I was like, oh shit, like light bulb.
yeah.
Wait a second. And we all come, hopefully, we all come out of that better. I don't think I would trade that relationship because it helps shape me and it helped me learn things about myself and relationships in general. But it's, yeah, like to your point, it's just that thing that is those things like that, like they click, like they stand out to me, and it is where it's, yeah, it could be potentially triggering, but also at the same time it can be comforting and reassuring, and like this is, yes, this happens and doesn't need to be shame because we're all human, and emotions and love is a crazy emotion. Like love is just, it's almost inexplicable. It's just, it's a feeling that makes it'll get you. It'll definitely get you if something happens to it. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know.
Well, that's like when Annabelle was saying she does seek therapy at one point in the story because she is like feeling so disoriented, right, around this whole thing. And then when the therapist tells her, like, you are experiencing emotional abuse, and she's like, wouldn't I know
Yeah.
if I was being abused? And that's the challenge, right? And the answer to that is no, not always. And so when Ryan would send her pictures of him crying, that is not normal behavior, okay? It's not. That is manipulative behavior. That is abusive behavior. And it's not like, it's not something that you would think of as like abuse right away. Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
was, and I guess around like the triggering point is like I'm trying to. I remember when I was writing it, thinking like I don't want to upset readers, but then I was also like, well, I wish I had this book to read when I was in this situation. Now, I realize this is a very niche audience, but I do. I did wish for like something, anything that I could have turned to be like, oh, yes, I'm not the only person this has happened to. Even
Mm.
though the experience that I had was obviously incredibly unique on its own, you can take away bigger lessons from it, I would say.
Yeah, it's all even it's kind of like, oh, just they're just like us.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if you're if like you're a journalist in a top media conglomerate, or if you're like an undercover agent. It's, oh, you could still get have complicated relationships too.
yes, definitely.
Just different complicated. Okay, let me see. What advice do you have for Annabelle? What advice do you have for Ryan?
So I think we talked about Ryan, like he should seek therapy, but I think now that I think about it more, I know we talked about this last time too. My advice for him then was to seek therapy, but it's almost like be like kinder to yourself because like he obviously has some trauma in his past that makes him that way. So what is that? And just relax a little bit, chill out. You don't have to be like so over the top all the time. Calm down. And then Annabelle, I guess my advice for her, which is I think always the same, which is just own your decisions. So I think she always
Mm,
knows the decision that she wants to make. And I think sometimes she makes the right decisions. I think she's true to herself. I actually, somebody just left. I know you're not supposed to read reviews.
oh yeah.
Generally speaking, I do not. However, I saw a new one star from this weekend, and the person that wrote it said something to the effect of, way to be a victim. The character, like loves being a victim and throws away her entire life so that she can remain a victim forever. And it's like, okay, that's not, I don't want to spoil anything, but that's the point was missed there, I would say, because
Yeah, it's like you didn't. Yeah.
it's not. So I think that advice to Annabelle is people will probably say that about you. People will have their opinions about
Mm,
the decisions that you make, but just own them because you are making the right decision for yourself and you always have, and you know what that is. So that's that
hmm.
for her.
Yeah, that's solid advice. I feel like a lot of people in maybe in the similar position, just trust yourself, and even if it's like things can be scary, but it's like trust your gut, right? Like you needed to,
Yeah, like people are not going to agree with
like,
what you're doing. Like people are always going to have an
no.
opinion, especially when you're in like a public position like hers. Like people are going to give you a hard time no matter what you decide to do. So just
Oh yeah.
own it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, what is next for you? Are you working on anything that you can talk about?
Not formally, I would say. I am always like scribbling down ideas. And by the way, like I'm not, this is not my full-time job. I really wish it was. I would love to be a writer, and that's all I do. But I have a full-time job in a completely different field now. So I'm a bit consumed with that. But I am always like scribbling down ideas for things that could become other novels. And another case of don't read the reviews, somebody else had written a review that said, there's more to this story. I want to spend more time with these characters. And I was like, oh God,
Mm.
you do?
It was like almost like a 180. You're
I
like,
thought I was
wait, you
done
want
with this
more? Well,
part. I thought I was done with this crap.
there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. But she like that person is not wrong. There is a lot more to that story. The question is like
Yeah.
how do we tell it? And like I think that if I were to do follow-up story, it would be like much more fictionalized. But it's interesting to think about, okay, where do they go from here? People get riled up about the end of cover stories because they're like they're not sure like how why it ended the way it did and I guess it does leave room for kind of okay, now what? So we'll see.
Yeah. That's good to know. Because I'm sure, yeah, who knows? Maybe one, you just need some time to let it stew, and then you're like, something will come to you, and you'll be like, okay, I know where this is going. Because I second that. I feel like, yeah, I would be curious to see, like, war. I guess I don't really care about Ryan, but I would still be interested to see, like, where Annabelle goes from here and, like, where that journey would take her based on where readers are left with,
Yeah.
like, at the end. That'd be interesting. It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lauren Claudare covers stories. Oh, where can we find you online and on social media?
Okay, so my website is laurenclaudare.com. That's Claudare. I'm on X now. I have, I think, like 15 followers, so feel free to follow me there. And I am also on TikTok as author Lauren, so you can follow me there too. I don't post in either place as much as I should, to be honest. I have a Facebook Lauren Claudere page, but I'm not very good about doing the social media part of this, to be honest with you guys. And then the book is available right now on Amazon only at the moment, and it's part of Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a subscriber to that, then you should be able to get it for free. So check it out.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Cover Stories that is available now. Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today, for chatting, and for just letting yourself be a little more open with your answers and hashing out the past and how this you brought this story to the world. And yeah, like if and when you are ready to talk about or you're gonna expand on this story, feel free to come back. I'd love to chat again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you.
You go. That was Lauren Claudare talking about her book Cover Stories. That book is available now. Check out the show notes where you can find Lauren online and on social media. Rate, review, subscribe. Find Cantina Book Club online and on social media as well, on YouTube and on your favorite podcast player so that you never miss a beat. And if you need book recommendations, you can check out cantinabookclub.com. I'm always writing reviews on all types of genres as well. So there's something there for everyone. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening.